So I think what is happening is you can get my audio, but you can't get my beautiful face on here. So that's okay. We're just going to deal with what we have. So what we're doing today is an extensive grammar review, and it might actually take a couple of class periods, but I just thought this was a good time for us to stop and kind of review everything we've learned over the years. I made a worksheet to go with this too, so I'm not really sure how the three of you are going to want to do this, Haley and Lainey and Philippe. I don't know if you want to watch a section and then stop and do the practice for it, or if you want to go straight through all of the recordings and like remember how to do all of this and then go practice it all. I'm not really sure what the actual class will want to do because we haven't done this yet. And so that's up to you. So we're going to fill out these notes together. So you should have a paper copy of this in front of you for us to fill out. This is not going to be super exciting. I wish I had like some good jokes or something to tell you in between. So stop, like pause the recording whenever you need a break and, stop and stretch or whatever. But we're going to try to get through this in just a couple days. I'd like to get this all finished on first semester. And then before the end of this first semester, before the end of the next week, I'd like to stop and test over these things. Okay, so we're going to go through all the verb tenses we've done before, and then just some other little grammatical things we've also seen over the years, and a couple that I've just run out of time at the end of the year before I've gotten there. And so we'll throw that all in here. And like I said, I want you to fill out your notes at the same time. And then it's up to you whether you're going to fill out the notes and then stop and do the worksheet, or you're going to do all the notes and then go back and do all the worksheet. Okay. So we're going to start off here with present tense, which we tend to do pretty well with because you really can't do anything without the present tense. So what does it mean, the present tense? So for example, it's what you do, like here in the present, or what you are doing, okay? So like for example, I eat is the present tense. I do eat is the present tense. I am eating. In English, that's the present progressive, but in French, it's also considered the present tense because it's happening in the here and now. By present tense, I really mean present indicative, because indicative or indicatif means that it is just factual information that is happening in the present tense. The sky is blue, I'm eating an apple, you're singing a song. Those are all like factual things that are happening. And I'm saying that because there's another, instead of indicative, we've learned about the subjunctive before, which is also a present tense, but it has changed the mood to subjunctive, and we'll talk about that more in a little bit. You can also have the imperative mood, where you're giving commands, and we'll talk about that in a little bit too. So those are all things that are in the present tense. So when I say present tense, I really mean the present tense in the indicative, meaning I'm just stating some facts. Okay. The most obvious, well, we know what all of these are. We know the I, the you, the he, she. We know that on can mean we, you, one, or they, just depending on how you're going to translate that. However you translate that, it always goes with the il form. Sometimes people want to stick it with a new form because we is one of the meanings of it, but it always goes with il no matter what. Nous does mean we, like you and I, we. The vous is a plural you, and the il and the l both mean they. Okay, so we're going to go across that all 6 times. I know we normally do 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. We do that because there's a first person across the top with the I and the we. There's a second person across the middle. In fact, I'll just type these on here. You can see them. So the je and the nous, that's a first person. The tu and the vous, those are both in the second person. Like when you talk about you, you're talking about you in the second person. And then the he and the she and the on, the we, you, one, they, and the il and the l, all of those are in the third person, which is why we do it first, second, third. But for the sake of making this all fit on this page, I decided to go across. Okay, so regular ER verbs, that's the most basic thing you can do, and I think we do just fine with this in French 4 and 5. So you know that step 1 is always to take off the ER, and then with the je form you add E, you got ES, you've got E, ONS, EZ, ENT. I think you know that like the back of your hand right now. So I didn't put an anglais version there because that could be any ER verb. Okay, we have talked before, and it's important that we know these before we move on to all the other tenses. Words that end in not just ER, but GER, words like manger, ranger, nager, corriger. There's a lot of verbs like that. They're mainly ER verbs where it's the EESE, ONSEZ, ENT, but the one difference is there in the GER form, your new form of that is also going to get an extra E stuck back in there. So if we were doing manger, for example, it would be mangions, not just mangeons. Okay, mangions, and you hear that. And it's important that we know these because, like I said, later when we need to know the new forms for the imparfait or different things like that, it's important to recognize those exceptions. Same thing, not just ER, but CER. Those mainly look like ER verbs, EESE, ONSEZ, ENT. The only problem is there, the exception, where there would be normally a C here. In the new form, it'd actually be a C with a se dire. Okay, I've been typing on my school Chromebook all day, and you make those accents different than I'm using a Mac at home, so that's why. So that would have a se dire, but only in the new form. And then verbs that end in YER, honestly, I'm just going to do an example here. So let's say we've got a verb like, I don't know, envoyer, balayer, lots of verbs that end in YER. What's going to happen here is in the L shape, and by the L shape, of course, I mean the je, the tu, the il, because it looks like the letter L right there. Basically everything except for the nu and vu. In that L shape, the Y will actually change to an I, and then the nu and vu are going to keep the Y. Okay, so we've got ENVOI, E, but notice that the endings are going to stay the same. ENVOIES, ENVOIE, but then this one would stay the same. So envoyons, envoyer, you're not changing the Y to I there, but ENVOI before the ENT. Envoy. But it's still the E, ESE, ONSEZ, ENT like we were used to. We just changed the Y to I in the L shape. Okay. So those are your ER verbs and the few exceptions that come along with ER verbs. And that works for every single verb in the French language that ends in ER with the exception of aller. Okay, aller is the only verb that ends in ER that doesn't work like that. Verbs that end in RE, that's another group of regular verbs. The problem is there's a lot of verbs that do end in RE that aren't necessarily regular verbs. Okay, like you can see that faire here ends in RE. Prendre, mettre, those end in RE. Dire, lire, those end in RE, but they're not regular RE verbs, so you have to know which ones are regular and which ones are irregular. Okay, but if they are regular, verbs like attendre, vendre, things like that, then you would take off the RE and you'd be adding S, nothing, as in take off the RE and whatever you see there is what it is. Like if the verb was perdre, the verb to lose, you take off the RE and you're just left with per. And then ONS, EZ, ENT like we're used to. Okay, and again, I didn't put an anglais there because that could be any of the regular RE verbs. Okay, verbs that end in IR. Again, unlike ER, where the only exception is aller, and there's, I feel like, hundreds of ER verbs, there are a lot of verbs that end in IR that are not the same. Like, for example, pouvoir, here, vouloir, devoir, those all end in IR. Venir ends in IR. Savoir, voir, but those aren't regular, so you have to know which ones are regular and which ones aren't. This would be verbs like finir, avertir, m'écrire, grossir, that are regular IR verbs. And if that's the case, if it is a regular IR verb, you would take off the IR and do an IS, IT, ISSONS, which I apparently didn't type, ISSEZ, ISSENT. Okay, so it does have the ONS, EZ, ENT that we're used to. You just have those extra ISS's in there as well. Okay, So dormir, partir, sortir, those belong to a group of verbs that end in IR, but it's a different group of IR verbs, so they're not going to look like this regular pattern, but they do follow their own pattern. They're not the only three like this. Verbs like mentir, which is the verb to lie, L-I-E, as in not tell the truth. Servir, as in to serve. There's more of them that are like this too, but these are probably just your three most high frequency. So those, remember, in your brain only, you're going to go doors, doors, dort. You're never going to say that out loud. Out loud, they all sound the same. Door, door, door. And par, par, par. But pars, pars, part. And sor, sor, sor. But sor, sor, sort. Okay, just so you can hear the difference, but don't say that out loud. And then they're going to follow the same pattern here too. So you got dormant. What's an S? My goodness, I can't type. Dorme and dorm. Okay, but then parton. See, there's an M here. So there's an M here, but there's a T here, so there's a T here. So once you see these patterns, it's kind of easy to remember those. Parton, parte, and parte. And then you can guess these. So like your sorton, sorte, sorte. I just think it's important that we're stopping and reviewing all of these right now. Now that we know all of the verb tenses, it's one thing for me to tell you these back in French 1, but it just makes more sense now that you know more, okay? Now that the pattern should be pretty visible to you, okay? The rest of these, obviously, these are not all of the irregular verbs known to French kind.